It's Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, LinkedIn Live, Hour of Empower. Today's word of the day is inner critic. Chat's on. We depend on chat to direct our attention to what's most relevant and important to you. Hopefully, generate a couple takeaways that you can actually apply and see value from. So, with that said, I'm fortunate to have Zev Halpern here. Zev's been a friend and a colleague on LinkedIn for a few years now, and is involved in a lot of cool things and actually even better things up ahead. So I thought this would be a wonderful opportunity to introduce Zev. And with that said, Zev, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and then what your initial take on inner critic is?
So thank you, Donald. It's great to be here. A little hoarse today, but I'll get it done. I am a relationship and clarity coach. And basically, I branched out two different ways. I before COVID, worked with couples right here in the office. They'd come in, and then COVID shut it all down. And instead of just sitting out COVID, I decided to put myself out and basically be a relationship coach to help people who are really struggling with that whole COVID, especially from a relationship point of view. And also after that, branched out more into the success and clarity and trying to help people who are looking for success and maybe overthinking too much or feeling that they just can't get there, take them by the hand and help them get there. And I've been fortunate to meet and have some fabulous clients who were just amazing to themselves and didn't even realize that they were. And now they're a force to be reckoned with. From the inner critic, the inner critic has been a thing for me all my life. You know, I grew up in pretty strict circumstances, and there are a lot of voices that get into our heads when we're little, and they stay there. Nobody tells them, guess what? It's time to leave. It's time to get out of your adult head. And they stay there and they accumulate and they take up room where you could be growing, but instead you're listening to these old negative voices, and those voices become your negative voices. And daily you throw negative self talk into your own little funnel, and it doesn't help. It doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't make you successful, but it's what you know. And we gravitate to the familiar, whether it's happy or sad. That's what we're familiar with. So I would say the inner critic, people get very comfortable with the uncomfortable. And it doesn't give them progress, but they have this sense that I know this place, even though it's not a really good place. And they need somebody, people, friends, group to reach in and grab them out of that and help them look in the mirror and say, today's the first day. It's not, you're not going back there anymore. You're going forward. And from that day, you help them change. And change is what it's about. And change isn't easy. We were all forced to change during COVID. COVID was a forced choice. You know, you wanted something different. Well, too bad for you. Wherever you lived in this whole wild world, they made rules and laws that basically told you what you had to do. So some of us recognized that it's time to be creative and got out here where they knew people were. People were on the internet because where else was there? There was only the internet. So a lot of people got known and a lot of people got helped. And I was happy to be able to lend what I do to that. And I got so much from other people. I mean, I listened to other people. I was, you know, a kind of a psychotherapist sits in their office, and it's a lonely kind of thing. Out on the internet, you get to hear all kinds of insights and learnings and wisdom. And I feel fortunate to have followed that path. It wasn't easy sometimes. Easy things probably aren't really worth that much. When it's hard, it really pushes you to excel. And that's what I've tried to do. And I've made lots of friends out here on the internet. I've never personally met them, but I know them and they know me. And they know me because they hear my soul. They know it's about heart. And I know their hearts and I know their souls. And you learn to differentiate who these people are and who they're not. And that's the experience that those of us who were courageous, because there is a bit of bravery involved in getting your word out here on the internet. But there are many, many rewards. And happy.
That's great. It sounds like you've gotten a lot of value from the dynamic changes that took place and continue to take place. And with that said, let me introduce our audience, which without them, there's no show. Renadib is here every day from India. Had a good call with him about a few days ago. Always here, always greets everybody in a positive way. He's a wonderful session. Omar, who I actually had a call last night, who's a great guy, has his own Zoom party show and has been doing it. And also is expanding beyond that. So another great colleague and a person you should connect with. We've got Victoria here. I know we're due a call. And Victoria's a great lady. I mean, all these people use this as an opportunity to network, make some connections, get to know people. These are people here who are in the same time, same place, and maybe the same reason you are. Why look for strangers when you have a connection already in place? Paul's here. Haven't seen you, Paul, in a while. Hi, Zev. Happy Friday. Great to be here to learn and support the topic. It's a powerful one today, inner critic. Self-doubt is something we will always experience, especially when we do things we haven't done before. I think that's an important element. Is inner critic is also inner hero to yourself, right? So everything's in until it's out, and everything is influenced by the way you judge yourself, by the way you perceive situations and how you decide you're going to react or respond to them. And I think an inner critic, if it's constructive criticism, is great, right? I mean, every critic has its value depending on what they criticize and how they criticize it.
The truth is sometimes it's a warning. Sometimes the inner critic is it's a friend and a warning. Don't go there. And I've had that happen before, where from inside somewhere told me that's just not a safe place. Don't go there. And I'm thankful for that. Although I think a lot of people feel that the inner critic hurts them, and they don't know how to be a friend, how to kind of get in touch with your inner critic. You have to be crafty with your inner critic, because your inner critic can be insidious. It can be an insidious foe, a demon, or it can be a close, heartfelt friend. And you have to decide who this is and mold them. Don't let them mold you. And I think
well, to that point, you have all these voices, right? You have an inner critic voice. You've got an angel voice on one shoulder, a devil voice on the other shoulder, and you're taking all this in. A lot of it has to do with what is your attitude going in? What have you just done? Who have you just been with? How much of them is affecting you still? The ripple effect, which really tells you about association and disassociation, responsibility and accountability. Because, I think whenever you have a critic, the best question, if you don't care for what you just heard, is asking why, right? Don't get on that plane. Why? Well, it could be an affordability issue, right? You don't have money for the ticket, or it could be, I believe something's going to go wrong and that's maybe not an inner critic, but an inner voice. And I guess the key then is, how do you transfer from being intellectual and heartfelt, right? What makes you feel aligned in your heart versus, hey, that's a way to get home 2 minutes earlier, right? But maybe the other way was a beautiful ride, a more satisfying ride. So, it's all a blend. And at the end of the day, it's the decision you make from the thoughts you receive. And the bigger thing beyond the decision is the action you take. Because now I know the right thing to do. I know what I want to do and what I like doing. But that but comes in, what will people think?
Because it allows you to weigh the variables.
Mm-hmm.
Weigh the variables. And most importantly, you take those variables. You have to lead. You have to take yourself to whatever that decision is. But sometimes that inner critic basically helps you put it right in front of you, and you look at it and you're able to decipher, is this the direction I want to go? Is this the route I want to take? Or the worst part is when it forces you to go beyond what you really want to do, to not do what you want to do, to overthink it too much. The inner critic sometimes really puts you in that overthink mode, and overthink can be really destructive. It can be helpful, but overthink, for the most part of the people that I work with, they spend a lot of time overthinking and not doing and being immobilized. And being immobilized means you're not going forward, you're not going back, you're stuck. And the inner critic sometimes is a big player in getting you to be stuck. So you got to rise above that and take those variables. And sometimes you got to throw the dice. Sometimes you have to do it. You have to say, okay, I don't know what to do, but I'm going forward. I'm going to be brave. I'm standing on this canyon and it sure looks like I'm going to fall, but I'm leaping. I'm going to leap, because I'm going to take that leap of faith, even in spite of what I'm feeling right now, because I know that what I'm feeling right now, I've been feeling for a long time, and it hasn't helped me one bit. So time to leap. And
Yeah, well, to that point, everything is relative, everything's conditional. There are no absolutes. Nothing is all black and white. And I think when more and more people appreciate that you only have to act as much as you need to if you're in a tenuous situation, right? If you're on the side of a mountain, you're going to walk a little lightly, then just start running.
No question.
You can slow things down, and at any time, your thinking goes pretty fast. How many times did you walk down a road you thought was the right road, and you decide, hey, I got to get out of here?
Yeah, right.
Right. And that right road now becomes the wrong road. And all it was your new perception. Right. And I think it's, the game is always between you and yourself. How fast do you get up when you fall? How much do you punish yourself when you screw up? And if you're just looking like everything is a continuum instead of an outcome, nothing requires a judgment. You're still in the game. The game plays if you play in the game. So let's go to some of these comments.
Paul, Victoria brings up a great one.
Great. So let me read that. Victoria says, inner critic and self-doubt is also driven by our mental health. If we are a person with mental challenges and have to find ways to overcome the negative mental tricks that happen. So would you like to spend 30 seconds or so on that, Zev?
Well, absolutely. I think, a lot of us, because of, perhaps maybe some traumatic event or mental health problems, have a distorted view. And it's not a clear view. It's not a true view. It's completely distorted by something that happened to us that took us off the path, or something that we need to fix. There are people out there, and there are no shortage of people who are suffering from major mental health issues, and they're not being addressed. And those people are making decisions that harm themselves, their families, everybody. And so the inner critic is definitely, Victoria, affected by mental health. Mental health could be a big distortion. And if you can remove the distortion, if you can find a way for someone to help you remove that distortion, all of a sudden clarity, obstacles are removed from the path, and like what you're seeing ahead of you is now what you were seeing before. And but that's the challenge of trauma and mental health issues and how we go about the decisions we make.
Okay, I think that is a quality way of addressing it. And everything is, to a degree. Again, there's no absolute. Some people do just great 90% of the time. Maybe it's that one time that they just lost control or got freaked out or whatever and did something that wasn't typical. But that, you still get punished for those things, right? And I think what we're working with here is the inner critic is whatever it is. But how many people do you have outside of yourself that can provide constructive criticism that you can share when it's getting overwhelming, when that loop that never leaves you alone, right? And you can't get out of it? The best thing to do is be with someone else, somewhere else, doing something else, because there's a natural benefit to distraction. How many times say, I'm just thinking about this too long? Or you're looking for something you lost and you're looking in places now, you'd never put it, but it's a drawer, right? And you go away for 45 minutes, do something else, and pretty soon you lead yourself right to it because you didn't give yourself the time and the space and the opportunity, because thinking of the right action doesn't necessarily mean you do it once you think it, right? You kind of plan for it. If you need to buy a house, you don't buy it overnight, you make a plan. So I think planning, reviewing, but more importantly, have a favorable audience that always laughs at your jokes and applauds you, that you feel safe. And I think that's why these communities are so good, because sometimes your friends, family, and neighbors are the worst people to ask for advice because they know you too well.
Bad counsel. Bad counsel.
They'll either feel they're going to hurt your feelings and they'll protect you, or they're just not very good fans of yours and they'll dream steal from you. So if you talk to people who are third party, fresh ears, fresh eyes, no skin in the game. And the nice thing is, if nothing came out of it, nothing went into it, right? They're a stranger when you met them. They're a stranger when you left them. I think that's important. Paul says the challenge to navigate is the fine line between enabling versus accountability. I remind myself to always tell yourself the truth. It all depends on what you think about stuff. At a certain point, 98% of stuff is like tomato when you get right down to it. Everybody's got an opinion, everybody's got an interest, but how important is it? Not very. Some people, they lose a Sunday football game, you can't talk to them on Monday. Other people in 10 seconds, it's like, what's for eat? So I think it's all about how you accept it, how you hold on to it, for how long. And, why would anybody's opinion, including yourself, be something that would dramatically change your thoughts or behavior?
I think trust, the issue of trust comes into it. Trust one person if you're able to. It's so challenging for people who are stuck to reach out. They're just in such a lonely place. And if just one person shows them, in some kind of way and offers them a place that they feel safe and trust, it can change the whole trajectory of their lives. Some people will never find that because they're too scared. Their distortions have pushed them to fear, and fear had basically put them in a lonely chamber. And there's a lot of people sitting in those chambers. And sometimes it's not just about them reaching out. I think some of us have to do a lot more reaching in. And I think if there was more reaching in our world, things would be a lot better. But, people are preoccupied with their own stuff. And well, they'll get help somewhere. Well, obviously, if you look and see all these people who are homeless and drugging out and doing all these things, they are not trusting themselves, and they are obviously don't have the correct information on how to get out of the trap that they've been put in. And not going to be easy for them to get out until somebody reaches out and finds a way to connect with them.
Yeah, but here's where I see the opportunity in the future is everything is going decentralized. Everything is peer to peer, right? You can work with the person next to you. You can't wait for the government or an institution to come to the rescue, right? Because of access, because of resources, you name it. Everything is getting harder and harder. That used to be more available, but there's more available now that was never available because everybody gets themselves typically into the situation over time. And it takes time to get out of situations that took a long time to get into in most cases, right? But if you can do it one day at a time, one idea, one person, one thought, and do it consistently, that's the key. Fill your tank up incrementally. Don't get a load and then go empty and then go for a load. And then don't depend on anybody if you're already dependent.
I think you bring up a super point, because a lot of people think that they got to go for the 100%. They got to change for 100%, and then we remember as little kids, Rome wasn't built in a day, but that kind of falls on deaf ears, because the truth is, if you change 5%, if you change 1%, then you can get to 2 or 3. 100%, that's a big, giant change and not so easy. So if you can just find a smaller percentage and get to that point, move up the continuum to that point, you could get to the next 5%. I mean, for me in my life, I feel that has been major, where I've realized I can't change at 100. I can't control everything. I can't change everything 100%, but I can certainly change it a bit. And that's made a big difference, because when you change it a little bit, then maybe your view changes. The distortion, you get on a different perch, and you need to get yourself on a different perch with a different view.
Well, and to that point, which I think is important, is there's momentum both ways. When you start taking positive movements and you're seeing forward progress and upward progress, it encourages you to do more of it. If you keep shrinking and folding, right, it encourages more ways to figure out how I can incrementally do a little bit more to be comfortably uncomfortable. The other element to it, because that was the whole theory, do what you can, not what you want. And, a lot of people would say, here's a 300-page book. Why don't you read it over the weekend? And somebody would just throw the book down, say it's never going to happen. But if they said, hey, can you read a page a day, right? In 6 months, you'll probably read the book, maybe get 2 books in that you wouldn't have. But you know what happens? You read a page, you get interested. Now, next day, you read 3 pages. And, you slowly, just like bodybuilding, you start with whatever weights you can do it comfortably. And then hopefully you add a little bit more so you're not hurting yourself. And you're challenging yourself to now get the lowest hanging fruit. What can you do?
You've told them the doable. It's become can do instead of can't do.
Well, and it becomes funnable, right? If you only do a little, you've got more time and attention to do it, right? If you're only going to eat 1 raisin today, and that's the goal. You could study it, turn it around, wonder about where it came from, who picked it. Everything's got a story with a story. How much of the context do you want to bring into your life? How deep and rich do you want to embrace certain things versus being chased by something, which is the past, or being fearful of what's yet to come, which is the future? And between that's your inner critic saying, we only got this much time, this much attention because of all the crowd we brought in here. instead of saying, hey, you had your time, you had your space, right? And that's where you take ownership, because you got to be the boss of you at the end of the day and say, what is this going to do for me? Because I think a lot of people, if they hit the fast forward button, because I've learned that when I get into certain conversations with certain people, if it keeps going, I know where it's going to end up. And it's like, why trigger that? And be right, be yourself, be all that stuff. But was the result right? Did that help yourself or anybody? But let me not forget about these wonderful people. Victoria, yes, exactly. Many assume that it's easy for people to change who are stuck with mental health issues. For myself, I've had to be more my own therapist and my own guide to drive changes in myself and my mind by being proactive. However, not everyone has, uh, uh, not everybody has this ability and don't know how to seek ways to not criticize themselves. And then Paul says, comes down to action because it was always starved doubt. My favorite movie is Top Gun Maverick. I love the iconic line, don't think, just do. I mean, that was whole Nike's thing, it just do it. You don't know what it is until you do it. And then you can always do what you did before you did it tomorrow, right? If unless you're burning bridges, you understand though, Rizev, because they reach out and most people shut them down. A lot of times people get shut down because of the way they approach people. I know so many people on LinkedIn, if you approach them respectfully and genuinely, and there was a deserving, everybody give you a 15, 20-minute call, and how many calls like that from how many people that you see here, and let them prove themselves by turning you down, right? And that's not going to happen. So if you know the help is there and available, and all they're saying is, I'll give you a call, all you should be saying is, all I need is a call, right? Why get ahead of yourself? Victoria, so true. She says, and here's Linda. Linda's a wonderful lady. Wow, great words, thoughts, and discussions. I know mindset has been hard for some to let go of. Have to run. Young at heart this morning. Have a great day. Be back later. Christopher's here. I haven't seen you in a while, Christopher. Good to see you. Great to see you again, Don. I like your style and vibe. You and your guest are always bringing the wisdoms. And we got Charles from Hong Kong. Charles, just the best. He was on last Friday night. I got to give Charles credit. It's 11 p.m. in Hong Kong when this comes on. And he's a working guy, too. And just a wonderful guy. And actually, I got to give you credit, Charles. You were the one about 5 months ago who came up with the word of the day because you were showing up. And feel free ever to come on the show. But Charles is great, and he really exemplifies what a high level, high integrity LinkedIn person can be. And I think everybody, in most cases, especially with their inner critic, faults himself for aiming too low, not aiming too high. And why not reach to wherever it is you want to be with whoever you want to be with, but show some grace, show some respect, and give people a reason why. Everybody help you. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Why do you need it? And I think that's important. Charles, and then we've got Christopher. Thanks for sharing the wisdom, Charles. And that's what this community is 20, 30 people who are really into getting deeper, sharing more, because it's not just me and Zev. It's us and all of us, right? And I like to think we're all around the circle sitting on the same floor together. And it's going across, not just to me and Zev or to you, but to Christopher and Charles to everybody else, the knowledge share. But mostly important, the inner critic support that other people are giving. And I think the other thing is, if you grace other people, your inner critic starts to soften. When you start complimenting everybody, it's hard to not compliment yourself, right? And here's another question. Why would you say things yourself you would never say to anybody else, right? If you saw somebody in the street and you repeated what you just said to yourself to them, you would be so embarrassed and ashamed. And why aren't you as good or better than that?
We can be quite cruel to ourselves. I mean, cruelty is, we can be very, very cruel. And it's really important to recognize, where did that come from? Why? I mean, you bring up the greatest point. Why would we ever think or even say something like that to ourselves, to push us, splat against the wall? Why would we do that? They wouldn't even do that. Maybe our worst enemy might not do that. And it's important that that happens, to question that. I mean, there's a thing that goes, question when that happens, because there's something there that you really, really need to address. I also wanted to say, I love it when people reach out and say, hey, Zev, love to, catch up with you. Been reading your stuff. And, I do the same kind of thing. I used to not think that. I would go, why would they want to talk to, why do I want to know about what they're doing? What they're doing kooky things. Now I love hearing it. The kookiest thing I like hearing about, because I always find something in there. There's a reason for how they've come, to the practices, that they're sharing on LinkedIn. And if you don't talk to them, you're not going to find out. If you just watch them, you're not going to really find out what's going on, where it came from, and why it might even be good for you, to take a look at.
That's a perfect point, because I've done a show like this every day for a year, 365. Took last Saturday off to be with my grandkids' soccer game. But the point is everybody who shows up in comments, I have a call with. Why? Because I want to get the relationship beyond the show. But more importantly, I need to know what I'll never know without them telling me is, why do you come here? What do you want to see here? Right? And the audience polishes the speaker with their feedback. If everybody says, hey, we love to hear about this, then that's where I'm moving. Right? Not here's what I think you should know. Right? Or here's what I know. That whole thing. The golden rule, do unto others as you want done unto yourself. But the platinum rule is do unto others as they want done unto themselves. Don't say, I like strawberry ice cream. Everybody's eating strawberry today.
Yeah,
right?
the sage on the stage got things to learn also. It's not. And if you engage with that audience when you're on the stage, you're going to just exponentially change your success and achievements and theirs, because they have so much to give, especially they're bouncing off of you. You're bouncing off of them. That's what humans need to do. We need to bounce off of each other more, instead of, hate and criticize and think, oh, well, they're lower than us. No, there's something to learn, from everybody. And I certainly have found that out, and I'll find it out every day, with the responses I get.
Well, the benefit of having a LinkedIn Live show is not only can you reach out to people that you'd love to talk to, but wonder why would they talk to you? And now be in the position of giving them a voice back to your audience for them, right? And no one's going to turn down a quality audience that's relevant, someone who honors them. And to your point, if someone said, hey, Zev, I just read 3 of your posts that just changed my life, you'd be like, hey, let's have a call, right? Because now you've got something I really need to know, because without feedback, you're dealing in a vacuum with tunnel vision.
Yeah, you're throwing wisdom, you have it from experience, but when you get the other person's experience, you have it all. Then you got the whole 100% picture of what's going on. Otherwise, you could go, oh boy, now I get a trophy because they like what I said. That's just half of the issue. Get the whole thing.
And I think people don't understand, it's not about acquisition, it's about retention and promotion, right? No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. When you say, hey, I'm available to everybody, now everybody says, wow. When the perception is not the reality, you have an advantage over the people who don't understand that. Right. If somebody thinks this is really difficult, and once they get into it, it's easy as pie, but in their mind, there's a premium for getting that person into it through that. And just like this show, so many people, I could never do video, I could never do that. The old way, I couldn't do it either, because to script it, stage it, produce it, edit it,
Too.
and then it looks so structured, and it's like you're talking to yourself. Where this is like, hit the button, respond to the audience, no homework, and you're on to the next day. And you know what it is? It's all about talking, not teaching. Because when you have plenty of time, and when you have plenty of, I'm doing this 7 days a week. I never have to, like, can I say something, or how long can I talk? I'm going to have more time. And that's why everybody being able to be around a coffee table, like if we just met all at Starbucks, and everybody says, hey, what's going on? What's on your mind? Let's talk about this topic. So we got a little bit of connection, and then share some experience, but it doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be heavy duty. It just has to be comfortable. Just like we said, read a page, eat an apple instead of a potato chip for a couple days. You know what I mean? Just those little things. And you know what good things about little things? They mix things up. Sometimes you got a crappy hand. The best thing to do is throw the cards in and deal out new hands instead of figuring out how to play a bad one. Give it up. Sometimes resignation gets you into your next opportunity, right? You can't be on two sides of the fence at the same time. Zev?
There's some authentic places on the internet, in social media, and there's more unauthentic places on social media, and there's reason to doubt. And some people get tricked, into some person's unauthentic pitch, or whatever they're trying to put across or sell or whatever. But when you show authenticity, when you just don't have that script, when you're finally able to do that, there's growth in that. We all go through it. We all have gone through the get out there and be in front of people. And that when you can be authentic, not worry, okay, so what I said might have tripped somebody or triggered somebody, you at least get to hear that. So this thing triggers some people. I get it. But when they know you're being authentic, and they know that you haven't planned this whole crazy thing, that you're going to throw at them like a machine gun, that's a discussion. That's the circle you're talking about. That's when you feel like you're in a room, maybe even in kindergarten. Who knows? You're sitting in the, my grandchild just literally 2 days ago started preschool. His first time of sitting in the circle. What an amazing thought for me, when I thought of him sitting in that circle with all those other people, and and that it wasn't all about him, egocentric. He had to look, he had to listen, he had to go, hey, there are other people in this world besides, a loving grandfather and his loving parents. This is a special kind of authenticity, when you can just talk, listen to what the people who are bringing, who are telling us, on the side of my screen. Like Christopher is saying, mindset can make you or break you. Before mindset, there was, it was called attitude, or maybe it was called mood. Mood becomes attitude, becomes mindset, where you can, if you have the right mindset, you can pretty much deal with most things. But we didn't know that before. We're starting.
But you see, now people have access to this information, and people they could never have had 20, 30 years ago. And that's the divide, is, are you on the side of knowledge sharing, information trading? Because you're only as good as what you're thinking and saying next. That's what everybody's going to determine their next conversation or not with you. And the point is how many people can you include in that circle and still make them feel equal in that circle? Because when it gets right down to it, everybody's somebody. Everybody's got a story that's important to them. Everybody lived their life every second as much as everybody else is living their life, And then what are you doing next? You got here because of everything you did or experienced, and whatever it was, it got you here, So how do you say, I wish that never happened? It's like, yeah, I wish for something that's not going to happen no matter what you wish for. But I think the key is is today is a new day. And what are you going to do different than yesterday if you're not happy with yesterday? Now, if you're living the dream, don't do anything different. Enjoy it, ride it, savor it, because it's not going to be, I hate to break the news, it's not going to be here forever. And some people, when they get to what they want, they keep going. And it's like, why? It's like, hey,
more.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. And I think, to your point, Zev, is when everybody brings something to the table, everybody at the table eats better, right? If you're just serving and everybody else is feasting, after a while you feel like, hey, this is not a good trade here. I'm giving a lot of value, but I'm not receiving. But if I can get one idea from Victoria or Christopher or Zev, I take that with me, so everybody, this is like a marketplace. What are you in the market for? What do you want to pick up? And the key to picking it up is sharing. This is what I need. This is what I want to hear. What's everybody's definition of inner critic now and wants to share it? And how do you use inner critic instead of it using you?
Unfortunately, though, the inner critic that saves you these days, there's a tremendous problem with saying what you believe. There is a big, places like this are safe. Thank goodness for places like this that you've created, Don. But there's some places out there where you could say something and have 100 people just pound you. I don't know what happened. I don't know how the world turned in that, negative direction. I don't understand how it happened. There was Woodstock, free speech. And now places like this, some people would be very nervous that, you're able to say what you want to say. I'm not nervous at all, but I know that there are millions of people who are afraid that you're going to say the thing that they don't want to hear. Well, for me, I say, hey, grow up. Too bad. It's a big world. There are other things, I could say that are a little harsher, because I think free speech is the whole world. It's the main deal. It's the big.
Well, there's no benefit not to being free at everything, right? So where does a restriction become a benefit? The other thing is, and we have to put this in context, there's 970 million people registered on LinkedIn. This broadcast also it's YouTube Live while it's LinkedIn Live. That's even a bigger audience. We're talking 30, 40 people out of 900 million. Absolutely, people are allergic to this show if they are mad bombers and haters and critics, and they run from it. The other thing I've learned too, your audience is like a garden. How you tend it is how it grows. So if you reward the positive people, the people who bring wonderful insights and quotes, and I know what it is to take an hour out of a day to go to someone's show, sit there for an hour, and not just absorb and listen, but contribute, share your best thoughts and quotes. And that's why it's so important to bring people up on the stage, because everybody wants to be seen and heard. Everybody wants to know that if they're taking an hour off, it means something to the people they're supporting, right? And you're only as good as your support. If everybody disappeared tomorrow, there's no show, because I could talk to Zev on a Zoom. We wouldn't have to do this. But the beauty of it is, if you can talk to each other as each other without thinking, what's the crowd going to think? Then it becomes far more authentic, because now you've just got some harmony. And I think the other thing, because I look at my life and I've just had nothing but success. It hasn't come without hard work and time and failure, many failures and many terrible, disappointing failures. But it just taught me a redirection is necessary, a reassociation. And you learn that, hey, this is part of how it goes.
Fail forward.
Yeah. Well, there's no failure, only feedback, right? And I think the key by bringing people together like this is everybody can benefit, because everybody's conditioned to support. Now Beverly's here, and now everything lights up, because whenever Beverly shows up, everything gets better. Hi, Beverly's here every Tuesday, four Tuesdays a month. Just a wonderful person. Actually, somebody, if you don't know Zev, is a therapist out in Montreal.
In Washington, D.C. D.C.
Yeah, you're in DC, but Beverly's up in Canada.
Very cool.
And is also doing some amazing things. I'm so happy to be collaborating, because that's the thing about the people here is once you get to know them, you want more than samples, right? Just say, hey, and the nice thing is you get to know and trust everybody little by little by watching them. So no one's got to like jump in, and there's no fire. And the beauty of it is you're starting to say, hey, Zeb's doing this pretty soon, or Beverly's doing that. You know, maybe that might be something that's interesting, because what you really want to do is build relationship-based benefits, not transactional. You know, not spaghetti against the wall, because I would rather put more time into less people and have deeper connections than less time into more people and have a bunch of superficial stuff, because now you got to deal with what comes with it. You know, everybody wants what they don't have. And then when they get it, they found out they were walking up the right ladder against the wrong wall.
Yeah, it's hard to clean spaghetti off the wall, too.
You said, Zeb. So, you know, so far we're in the 46 minutes. It's flying by. What's your impression of the audience and the word so far?
I think I feel that this is a safe place, and first and foremost, and I think that to me, that's the most important thing. And I also feel I can say pretty much anything I want to say. I don't feel guarded. I don't feel like, I mean, look, there are haters everywhere, but I feel there is a community that's building here that absolutely loves what you're doing, and that you're bringing them quality points, insights, triggers, it all, and you're allowing them to share their best. And I think we want to give our best, and this is the kind of place where you can do that. And I think that's why I'm thankful that you saw me on LinkedIn and saw what I was doing, and reached out and asked me to be here, because that's an experience I don't always have. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm honored and privileged to have you, because at the root and essence of everybody that usually gets attracted to this is the common denominator is they're really good people first. Whether they're a carpenter or a lawyer or whatever it is, they're good, honest people who feel benefit when other people can be helped and when they can even play a role in it. And I think everybody's available for a little bit, right? If someone says, hey, do you got 2 minutes to help me lift something? Yeah, 2 minutes, I got 2 minutes for everybody, you know? And if everything is 2 minutes from a little and 2 minutes from a little, it adds up. But more importantly, people want to help people they like. You know, just like people do business with people they like, because just like elevator buttons, some take you up, some take you down. And you know, it's like being with friends, and and you're golfing and you don't even keep score, right? Or you're at dinner, you forgot what you ate, but you were so excited by the conversations, right? Some things are just a reason for better things.
Because you were immersed.
And most people major in the minors. You know, they got this big picture and they're so caught up in this little situation or this little event, or someone said something. It's like, I didn't even hear it. And somebody's like, I can't believe it. And they go off on this stuff, and it's like, holy moly, here's where we're going.
Beverly brings up a really special word, integrity. Mm-hmm. Integrity for me in my life and in watching other people and seeing the world and growing up, it's everything. Integrity is one of the most, it's like in the old Groucho Marx show, the word would come down. Integrity is huge, and it's not such an easy word, but it's everything that I look for in people, and at least try to offer from myself. Not always easy, because some people can frustrate you. But if you can show your integrity, people see it. This is the see-through. You can't fake it. You can't fake integrity. I've seen people try to do it, and it doesn't work. So,
yeah, you're absolutely right.
Beverly. Thank you, Beverly.
Yeah, no, Beverly, I say is just outstanding in her ability to grasp and respond to something in a really, thought-provoking, enlightening way. And I think that's so important. Is integrity is what everybody remembers that person by or not, right? And there's people looking at you while you're thinking about doing something when you're thinking inner critic. And I know there's been times, there's times when people said, well, I would never do that for no amount of money until that amount of money's been presented, right? And then there's usually an integrity issue, right? And everybody is like, hey, we know if you took it, it was like, and I was always responsive to the people that I spent so much time building integrity with, right?
The little devil goes, everything has a price. No, not everything has a price. Not all of us think that. If you think everybody thinks that, everybody doesn't think that. There are, humans are, look, we get tempted. Temptation, low-hanging fruit. We're humans. That's what we are. We have weaknesses, and a lot of people fall into them. Or worse, they're in such bad straits that they're in some ways they can't help themselves, because if they don't, they won't survive. And so they have to make nasty decisions, and that we don't always respect, but we don't completely understand what they're going through at that moment. And there are a lot of people in those straits today.
Oh, sure. There's a lot more people will be there tomorrow, but a lot of those people have never had or have lost integrity along the way, and it's not expected anymore. Right. It's the people that have really worked hard, just like people work hard to keep their body in shape. People work really hard to protect and help their family, things like that. But there's also that guilt that people don't know they're going to receive when they do things that lack integrity, right? When you have to hurt somebody to make something, that money you got will always be tainted by possibly, and you got to ask yourself, will I feel guilty? Will I feel ashamed? Is this the price that I got to carry with me? And what am I going to do with it again? When you got so much, what is the next batch of it going to do except maybe fulfill an insecurity, right?
I think sometimes is, how do they sleep at night? I don't know. I wouldn't be able to, but that question I don't ask it to him. I ask it him, a lot of times in my mind.
Well, maybe that's where the inner critic really took over, where it made all the decisions on how much instead of how well.
That's right.
And how much do you need? And I think, when we talk about everything, ultimate happiness should be the standard or the measure that one can look at the end of a day and say, I was successful. I had a happy day. I created happiness for others. I made it a better place. I left the log pile bigger than I found it.
Time to celebrate.
Absolutely. I think that's so key, is people not only don't acknowledge their successes, and they could be small. I really vacuumed well. I don't see anything I left behind, and I take pride in that maybe, but you have to acknowledge it to understand, first of all, it's there. Second of all, I was responsible. This place wouldn't look as clean, and everybody that comes in it is going to benefit from what I did. So if you can get into activities that transfer through and with other people, and I think that's the beauty of this show. This is live, but for the next 20, 30 years, this show will be seen. Ideas and thoughts we're sharing are evergreen, will continue to be utilized. Like I mentioned the other day, my grandkids come over and sleep over at least once a week. They're only 10 minutes. And I'm over there like 2-3 times a week. and just wonderful kids. But my grandson just brought up last week, he said, I've been watching your show every day for 3 weeks. He's 10 years old. And I said, well, how do you do it? You're in school now. Because before it was like, he said, well, every day when I come home, that's the first thing I do is I watch the show. And I see so many wonderful, wise people. Sometimes I feel sad because of some of the stories I hear. But I said, hey, Jonathan, you are so ahead of everybody else. If I knew what people are sharing and talking about on these shows when I was your age, it's going to be huge. And the nice thing is he did it on his own. I didn't have to tell him to do it or anything else. And I think, if a 10-year-old can allow themselves to hear, and I think that's the first step towards taming that inner critic, it's giving it more information, giving it more diversification. So it doesn't have the first critical thing, and then you get to blend it. And I think, the thing is, you want to game whatever it is in yourself to get you in the best position going forward for yourself. Right. And to Zev's point, if you got to tell the inner critic, take a hike, you've said enough. You've hurt my feelings enough. Sometimes you got to be one-on-one within yourself to straighten things out. You got to be the boss of yourself. Right.
It's so about, you got to box.
Yeah. So with just a few minutes left, Zev, so why don't you share I'll just cover some more people so we don't neglect. Ashif, honor your commitments with integrity. Les Brown, he's just a wonderful speaker. He was actually married to Gladys Knight, maybe still is.
Wow.
But I got to meet him many times. I was in an organization with him in the 90s with Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy. It was just great. Beverly says little wins can add up to big wins. Shut down that inner critic and just push through it. And Beverly's had so much experience helping people with exactly this, by, to Zev's point, putting it in a clear perspective for someone to see for themselves is, hey, you are so off as far as being tough on yourself and not giving yourself credit. And, even though people initially may resist it, it's starting to seep in. And they may not be able to say, tell me more, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't, because all someone has to know is someone loves them. Someone cares about them. When you say, what do you do with your inner critic? I got a wife of 45 years that's just the best when things are the worst, which is rare. Someone will always say, you're taking it too hard. You're thinking too much. It's not that bad. And they're right. And the idea is let it seep in a day or two. The challenge is people react instantly to things or they get triggered. When if someone says, hey, go to sleep, wake up tomorrow, you'll think about it, things will be different. And, I don't care. It doesn't matter. When the people who care about you the most tell you whatever you're worried about, they don't mind or they trust you to figure it out however it is. At least you're not fighting 6 battles, and having to feel like, hey, I was weak and now these people are on my case.
Never, I'll always take a gentle stroke. Thank you.
Yeah, and ask another question or two. Push through typo. So, Zev, back to you. Finishing up, this was a great collaboration, and it was such a great knowledge share and information from these wonderful people. Love to have you on today and have you back. What's your thoughts?
I think it was really to see the people's response to you, also to experience you putting out to people. Basically, it's going to make me do this too. I'm going to, I do have a podcast, but I'm going to find a way, I'm involved in another project right now, but I'm going to find a way to push this out too, because I think there's huge value in this particular kind of circle. I like it. And I'm grateful for you for including me. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well deserving. And this is definitely win-win-win in the best case. So with that said, come back in 23 hours. I'll tell you tomorrow, we've got Carl Dakin and Kelly. And Carl's a financial wizard, lives here in Denver. And then on Sunday, we've got Leslie Flowers, Catherine Chadwick, Harvey Tuck on Monday. On Tuesday, we've got Zen, who's a new gentleman. And then Malaya, she's a wonderful LinkedIn expert coming on Wednesday for the first time. So Zev, thank you so much. Audience, thank you. And
Thank
talk again if you can in 23 hours. Take care. Bye for now.